Welcome to What's Your Story, where we, Jamie Marco,
and Stan Brown,
delve into the extraordinary lives of everyday people.
Listen in as we uncover the unique tales that shape who we are,
one story at a time.
Hey, let's get ready to explore today's story.
Let's do it.
Hey, it's us again.
It is. It's us every week.
You're wearing the Think hat.
Again, yes. I love this hat. It's interesting. I did a gig for Trend Micro, which is a internet security company.
Yeah.
Data security company. Probably like 14 years ago in Barcelona.
You said it properly. That's fine.
Thank you. And I was there, and next to us was IBM. And they had these hats, and they said,
Did you say IBM?
Why do you say it like that?
Barcelona?
Oh.
IBM?
Really?
Get with the program, please.
Okay. So anyway,
listen, I have so few moments of lucidity. It's a shame to pass them up.
Okay. So they had these hats that say think on them. And I was like, oh my gosh, if there was ever a billboard of what people should be doing in everyday life, I want one of those hats. And so one of the guys came and listened to my talk. And afterwards I was like, hey, can you get me a think hat? And I think he was like, they were all out of them or something like that. And he's like, let me see. We've given him a lot of them away. Let me see what I can do.
Don't tell me he gave you his.
No, I don't like to wear something like that. That's gross. No. But at the end, we were there for a few days. And at the end of the conference, when I was done speaking and all that good stuff, he walked over to me and he's like, look what I found. And I love it. And so this hat is very old. I absolutely love it. And what's so funny is that I was wearing it one time, maybe like at the grocery store or something like that. And someone's like, oh, do you work for IBM? And I'm like,
well, they knew.
No, why do you work for IBM? And he's like, oh, we only had those hats, those hats or whatever. He like knew about the hat. So
I have one that says stink.
Stink?
Yeah,
really?
Stink.
I think a funny story is about how like you used to type your name so fast, and rather than write Stan, you would write Satan.
Satan. Actually, and I wouldn't even know. I'd actually send the email out. I would just say, hey, thank you, Satan. At least they knew they were on the good side of evil, I suppose. I don't know.
I don't know. Well, I'm excited for today. So we are going to be reunited, and it feels so good.
We're doing a Dick Clark special or what?
No. So our guest today is a friend of mine from childhood.
Hold on. His name is, sounds like Brent.
Yes, very good. You do read my notes that I sent you.
I wouldn't. I read your hat.
Oh, there we go. And I've known him since childhood, but I don't really know a lot about like his life as an adulthood. So should we just jump in and welcome him in?
Well, since I know nothing about his childhood or his adulthood or his presenthood, put him on.
Well, let's do it.
Brent, come on down, Brent.
I don't even think I have actually like had a conversation with him I feel like we reconnected in our 20s at some point. But I'm not sure. He may remember. Oh my gosh, like you're an
Brent
adult.
Osborn, how are you, man?
Grown adult. Holy crap. Like so listener, you don't realize this, but he's
on mute. He's on mute.
Camera. And I'm looking at him. He's on mute, but I'm looking at him and he's like this full-grown adult. But like when I think of him, I think of this like 10-year-old. Back in the day, you were never small, Brent.
I was always a little doughy. It's okay. I've leaned out in my older age. Mr. Brown, it's good to see you.
Nice to see you, sir. I'm Stanley. Thank you very much.
God, you've met him like 1,000 times.
I think I was probably 11 or 12 or 13 or something last time I saw your dad.
Oh my gosh. And like at our house, probably like swimming or doing something. Yep. But my dad.
Oh, he's the one.
I'm the one.
Well, it is good to see you, friend. Hello.
Great to see you. How are you?
I'm great that I get to connect with you. I was trying to think, I was just saying, as we were doing like our intro to the show, when was the last time that you and I actually had a conversation?
I have no idea.
I know.
It's been like over 20 years.
100%. Like I feel like
so much catching up to do. My goodness.
I know. I don't know like where I would have been living or what city or what time in my life. I feel like
it was way before Chicago. I don't even think like in college we really caught up.
No, I know. So I was telling my dad, I'm like, I know him from like elementary school and middle school stories.
I think I met you in like fourth grade. It was like
welcome to episode 1 of a 20-part series.
No doubt.
I mean, did we meet? It must have been like second or third grade, right?
Something when when we went to camp, but it was like the old location.
Yes. Oh, so that would have been, oh yeah, like a new college. So we went to
Yes.
the listener, if you're just joining us, we met in camp. Who actually we had another guest, Chuck Dockery, which I don't know if you remember Chuck Dockery or
I
not.
don't remember Chuck now.
I have known Chuck since high school, but I posted a picture from camp from like those days where we were back on we were going to camp on a college campus because they didn't have their own campus. And he's in one of those pictures. I need to find it. Let me see if I can
This
find
is
it.
like
Great.
putting you guys in a time tunnel.
It's weird. And he commented, he's like, Jamie, we went to camp together. I'm like, we did what?
Like, wait, what? Yeah.
Yes, like I need to find that picture if I can. So bizarre. I'll see if I can look for it later. But so bizarre. But those were the days like back, that would have been like early 80s. I mean,
Long time ago. Long time ago.
before social media, before cell phones, before digital anything really. I think maybe Game Boys came like when we were in middle
We
school
were
even.
in like middle school. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Brent, where do you go to camp now in the summer?
Usually my summers entail driving my kids to random sporting events. That's my summer at this point.
You may want to go back in the time tunnel later
I would
on.
love to go to camp. I'll meet you there. You let me know.
Well, and like fast forward, we're both parents, we both have kids. You're living in a whole another state. But you'd actually never lived here anyway. You would only come for the summer, right? Or no?
Well, I was born there actually, but moved to Tennessee when I was like, I don't know, like 6, 7, something like that.
Yeah, and then you'd
And
come here.
my dad still lives there. My sister still lives in that area.
A lot of folks going to Tennessee, Jamie, even people you know.
I know. Where in Tennessee are you?
I'm not in Tennessee now. It's just where I grew up. I'm in New Hampshire now. I live in
Oh,
New Hampshire.
I didn't even
Yeah.
know
Are
that.
you living free?
Or dying. Yep, you got it. Yeah, it's I'm about 45 minutes north of Boston. And yeah, I went to school up here. I went to Boston College after high school and ended up settling here post army. But yeah, so like my dad still lives down in Sarasota. I go down a decent amount. My brother's actually down there too. My middle brother.
Well, you've
And
become almost a suburb of Boston, haven't you? People
pretty
commute?
much. Yeah, I mean, the only thing we're missing is a commuter rail. Like you got to go a couple towns south to get the train, but they're trying to get that completed. So it's not a bad place to live if you have to drive down there, but commuting down there is not super fun. That's for sure.
So, I mean,
Yeah,
there's,
so I would come down in the summer. So I would be in Tennessee with my mom for most of the year and then come down soon as school was out and spend, 2.5 months down there. And they shipped me off to Jewish camp. And obviously I'm not Jewish. So that was
It was
pretty
a
cool.
punishment.
Yeah, no,
Nice.
I met the best friends at that camp, including Jamie, but also my friend Joey. Obviously, you know Joey. I met my best friend Joey at that camp, and he and I talk to this day. I went to his wedding. He was at my wedding. I know his kids.
Those early years are important. It's critical stuff.
It's pretty cool. Yeah. So those relationships that I made through that camp, I still keep in touch with a handful of those folks. And it was such a big part of my growing up. That collective that was at the JCC camp was pretty funny. I was, on Fridays, what was it? I think we did Shabbat on Fridays, and I certainly fish out of water there, but I would eat a lot of the bread because it was.
If it hasn't been said all those years, you are now, I ordain you an official Jew.
Thank you. I accept willingly. Yeah, it was
funny
awesome.
though, like that was, I mean, like I do think about, we had such a cool group of friends and we, like just played. Like it was just really just like you learned your friends through play, which I don't think is as much available today. Like I don't know, we didn't really.
It's so orchestrated today. It's
Yeah.
like we are going to have a play date and like
Yes.
force these two children together and like go play. And that camp was so great because it brought people together from all sorts of different walks of life.
Yeah.
And you just met people that you didn't know, and then you just made friends and played. It was awesome. It was such a great experience. And I think, I give a lot of credit to the leadership and the counselors there to sort of support that and promote that. And we had very little like weird stuff go on at that camp. You know what I mean? Like there's no fights or like people mad at each other. It was just everybody hanging out, having an awesome time.
Everybody like truly loved each other. And it wasn't like, I think actually, so they've just restarted up a camp there now. They've changed.
I didn't realize that it closed. I'm shocked it closed.
I know. And I don't know why it did, but they restarted it. But I think the really cool thing about it is that while, yes, it was sponsored by the Jewish Federation or the JCC at the time, I think that actually, in fact, like 60% of the kids that attended the camp were not Jewish, which is like a
Not when I
crazy
went there.
number. Yeah. And like, and that's the thing is that it was like, but we just had I remember those are some of my best memories. I mean,
For
we
sure.
had the, like with color war and it just, and like you said, like friendships, like I know, like, listen, we haven't spoken in maybe like 2 decades, but I know if I really needed something, I could pick up the phone and call you and there were, and you and like a handful of other people, and they wouldn't think twice about like, yes, I'll be
2
there.
seconds.
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw her not like, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago in New York City. I was
Yeah.
down there for work and realized she was there, and her and I hung out for a night. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, was supposed to meet us, but she got tied up. But obviously, I see Joey. I talked to Beth for a long time before
Yeah.
she passed away. I still talk with Jess,
Yeah.
who was our counselor, I think, which is hilarious.
Fun.
Um,
It's
so
just,
it, yeah, it was just it was such a good crew that I could pick up the phone and call any of those people, including yourself, and be like, "Hey, I need some help," and
yeah.
it would be immediate. And I think that's just a testament to sort of the culture that place sort of cultivated.
Yeah. Well, how old are your kids now?
So my oldest is a junior in high school. She's 16,
Oh,
almost 17. And then I
almost.
have an eighth grader, a sixth grader, and a first grader.
Well, and isn't it interesting? Like I have a third grader and navigating the friendships and seeing it as a parent, like how they make friends, and then you see like the little jerks, and you're like you want to hold yourself back from like going and literally like hurting another child. Not listen, listener, I would never do that. But if you're a parent, you get it.
I
That a kid's
totally.
mean to your kid, and you're like, I'm gonna like, you know.
Yeah, it's so, I'm pretty easygoing, but I generically don't like other people's kids. So like
You're
uh
normal.
yeah, but we are very lucky. Like my kids are just awesome human beings. And I tell them all the time, like they do sports and all the stuff. They're competitive. Yeah, yeah. Tell my eighth grader all the time, he's a freak show athlete. And I'm like, dude, I don't care if you play a sport again. My job as a dad is to raise a good human being. And that's what you are. Big hearts, treat everybody awesome. Like they make me like I'm starting to learn from them. Like
Yeah.
we talk about, my biggest thing about my life, I think, is relationships. I've done a lot of stuff in my life, been lots of places. And building and cultivating relationships that you hang on to, I think you come across a handful of people at every stop, whatever you're doing. And like hanging on to those really good ones matters so much. And not just from a, filling up your bucket sort of sense, but also just learning from other great people. Um, and now I'm learning from my kids now. It's like watching them interact and how they conduct themselves. They're the slow down aspect of life and the don't get so wrapped around the axle about this or that, or don't sweat the small stuff, like things you talk about but you don't actually execute. And they bring that sort of back to the forefront for me, which is awesome. And it's just cool to watch them grow up and be, if you had to write a blueprint for your kid, like they're all following the blueprint, which is great.
Where does that relationship like aspect of what you believe in come from? I mean, obviously, like
Yeah,
starting at 6 years old and coming to a camp, not knowing anybody, you'd have to make
yeah,
friends pretty quickly. You've held on to that. And we'll talk about like your path and where you got to now. But where
yeah.
does that stem from in you?
I mean, I had a pretty volatile childhood. Like I moved a lot. My parents were divorced, changed schools a bunch. And so for me at an early age, it was about, trying to find one or two people at every stop that, I could befriend quickly. Right. It was as a
Sure.
kid, you're like, I need an ally. Who we got. And that's sort of how it started. And then they sort of grew into every stop that I went to. I would reach out to folks and be like, hey, I'm going to, Fort Knox. Do you know anybody there? And like, oh, I know these two dudes. Here's their numbers. And I would just call them, be like, hey, I'm supposed to call you and we're supposed to hang out. And so I would, and we'd hang out. And now we're friends. I'm friends with those guys. So it's about like, for me, it's utilizing your network to just meet other awesome people. So like if you told me, hey, you're going down to Boston, you should call this person, I would be like, done. Because if you're recommending that person to me, I know
Yeah.
that person's awesome. So it's about cultivating just self-growth too. Like the more amazing people you can get in your life, I think the more little nuggets you sort of take from people and put in your kit bag. And I think it just promotes self-growth, and it also just makes you a happy person, I think.
I love that. Am I remembering correctly? Did you go to BC for sports or
I,
am I
I
wrong?
played rugby at BC, but I didn't go there for sports. So
Oh,
I,
okay.
I went to BC on an ROTC scholarship.
Oh, okay, got it.
which is how I paid for BC. But then when I did ROTC in college and then served after. But yeah, I played rugby at BC, which is, three of my best friends still to this day are
Very
from that.
gentle sport.
It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of broken noses and a lot of hungover Sundays, but it was a good time.
And then how did you get into ROTC to begin with? So you start that in high school, but it was that because
I didn't do it in high school. So my oldest brother was West Point class of '89,
Oh,
and
great.
my middle brother was Naval Academy class of '92.
Wow.
And so that was the only way we were going to be able to afford college, is figure out a way to pay for it.
Before you, was your dad or granddad military also?
Nope.
Oh, started a whole
Uh,
new thing.
yeah,
wow.
no, they interesting. So my two brothers, same mom, different dad. They're full brothers. And then I have two sisters that are same dad, different mom. So I have zero full siblings, but I have four siblings. So we're all very close.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, you are like all five of you are super close.
well, no, like the sisters aren't that close with the brothers, but they know each other
Got
like
it. Okay.
well.
Do I
Um,
need a scorecard for this? The sister
you're
and
gonna
the
need
brother.
this family tree is really messed up, Stan. It's really messed up.
It's been fertilized well.
Yeah, it is. It is all over the place. Um, so as I was sort of going through the college selection process, I knew I had to figure out a way to pay for college.
Sure.
So I applied to West Point. I did not apply to the Naval Academy because I did not want to be on a boat in the ocean. And just so happened that the Senate Majority Leader at the time, Bill Frist, is from Nashville and went to my high school. So
Hmm.
he gave me I got an appointment to West Point from Bill Frist
Oh, that's great.
and ended
Wow.
up turning it down because I
It's
had the
not so
ROTC
great.
scholarship at Boston College. So my brothers were like, "Don't go." They basically were like, "It is horrible. Like if you could go to a regular college and still like go for free, do that." So I
Yeah.
took their advice and turned down the West Point nomination and went to BC on an ROTC scholarship.
Wow. And then so you're doing ROTC all 4 years at
All
BC.
4 years, yeah, and summer
And,
stuff.
what's the commitment for service after graduation?
4 active years.
Okay.
Oh, so if you do ROTC, you have to go
That's how
into.
you
If
pay it
you
back,
take
sure.
if you take scholarship money, you do, yeah.
Oh, and how long did you serve in the Army for?
I just did my 4. They got their money's worth out of me. When I signed up
What years would
when I
that have
signed up at
been?
'96, the world was pretty chill.
Yeah. So that would have been what, like 96 to 2000?
Yeah. So I was in Korea actually. I was stationed in Korea for a year, so I was in Korea when 9/11 happened.
Oh boy. Gee.
And Korea was actually a lot of fun until that. Then it got
Yeah.
less fun. So
What
I
was
was
that
in Korea.
like? Because like tell us a little bit about that. Like you're on foreign soil, 9/11
Yeah.
happened, you know.
Well, for us, it was the middle of the night. We were hanging out playing poker, a bunch of us, and where we lived, it was a bunch of junior officers. Like all the doors were always open, and someone was like, "Hey, turn on CNN." And we were not sober, and turned it on, and the first one was there, and we were like, "Holy crap!" Like because we didn't see it like go in, we were just
Sure.
watching the one tower, and then we saw the second plane hit, and we all just started getting dressed because in Korea they have this thing called alerts, and like once a month the sirens go off and you just have to, you're pre-packed, you get all your stuff, you go draw weapons and ammo, you go to the motor pool and you load up if you're an infantry guy or a tanker or whatever you do. The siren goes off and you muster all together and
Sure.
you actually roll out of the gates. And sometimes you deploy for like 30 days, like in the field, just doing training stuff. And sometimes they just send you home after everything. Like you check all the boxes and then they're like, all right, see you guys at zero
Just
six.
like 30 days at camp, eh?
Yeah, it's very similar, very similar. So when we saw the second plane, we saw the second plane hit, and we all just started getting dressed and grabbing our stuff.
You're
And,
mobilized, sure.
yeah, then we were waiting, and then the siren went off, and so then we went to check in, and this one was different, right? We got our weapons, but we also drew live ammo. Like the gates were closed. We were actually doing patrols around the base, and we didn't have much connectivity back with the States, so we didn't have a great idea of sort of what was going on. But we were kind of on lockdown from that point. I was about halfway through my deployment there when that happened. So then, then it kind of settled down and we got back to sort of normal training routine, but like we couldn't really leave post and we just sort of went about daily training stuff. And then I came back to the States. When was it? Like April or May of 02. Is that right? Yeah, like April or May of 02. I went to Colorado and stationed out at Fort Carson. And I took over the scout platoon for a combined arms tank battalion. So like reconnaissance guys. And we did a couple training ops, and we were out at the National Training Center when we got our orders for Iraq. So we got back from California for, I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks, and then we did a train up locally, and then loaded stuff on a train and sent it down to port, and then flew over to Kuwait.
Wow.
Yeah,
At
so
that time, did you know that when your 4-year expiration came up, you would get out, or they
I was
didn't know?
I was still a couple years away, so I knew they had me for a minute.
Sure.
But we didn't know how long we were going for. We didn't really know the mission that well. And all of our stuff was gone because it was, they put it on a train and then they put it on a boat and they send it, right? And so we didn't really have a lot of training stuff that we could actually do. So we were just waiting for the orders when we were getting on the plane. So we ended up getting over there. Well, originally, you guys probably know this, but originally we were supposed to, so First ID based out of Georgia, they were supposed to come in through the south, and then our division was supposed to come in through Turkey. So all of our stuff was sitting in the Med, like trying to get to port, and then Turkey changed their mind and said we could use airspace but not port space. So our boat had to like slow roll all the way around back to Kuwait. So we were delayed by a couple of weeks. So we get to Kuwait and get all our stuff off the boat, and Third ID, came over the berm and hit Baghdad, took a left, and we came in, hit Baghdad, took a right. So we got there. We were first wave. So we were like March 03. And we were there for a year until 04. So I left April 04.
How many, I'm probably gonna use the wrong word, so listener, don't hate me, but is it battalion? Is that what you're called? No.
There is battalion. There's lots of different names, right? So a battalion has 4 companies, and each company has platoons.
So how many
and above the battalion is division.
Got it. So, and you were actively at war fighting?
Yeah, for a year. Yeah. Well, 13 months technically.
Yeah. Wow. And how many were in your group?
So I was in charge of 30.
You were an officer, or?
I was, yeah. So I was an officer. I had 30 guys, including myself. And our job, we were the reconnaissance platoon. So it's really expensive to move tanks and Bradleys and human beings. So before they would go from, point A to point B, like we would go make sure, the bridge that was on the map is actually there, like the road is actually functional, like all that sort of stuff. And then once we got sort of settled, we became sort of part of what they call a quick reaction force. So we did a lot of, like short-term raids and, tracking people down and searching for bad guys and picking fights.
Sure.
And you're like 22 at the time.
Yeah, I was like 22, 23. It was nuts.
Jeez. I mean, I would imagine you saw some things that some of us could never even comprehend, maybe lost some friends that no one, needs to know. So, I mean, how do you first of all, I think I knew that you served in the military, but I didn't realize, like we talk about everyone's so selfish. Like we're all living in our own world, especially at 22. I think I had just gotten off working on cruise ships. I don't even know I'm trying to think of where I was. But wow, that has to have been a pretty foundational moment in your life of,
it taught, it taught me a lot of things. I saw great leadership there. I saw really bad leadership there. I had a great appreciation for what family feels like. I wasn't married, had no kids, and a lot of my soldiers were married with kids, and I couldn't imagine leaving my kid for a year once I had a kid, and you understand it's hard, but you don't really understand how hard it is until you have a kid, right? And so that, that weight that they carried every day was just an additional burden that I didn't have to deal with. I mean, I considered it. I knew it was terrible, but I didn't realize how hard that was. I mean, you'd leave, you had a 2-year-old, come back, got a 3-year-old, hasn't seen you in a year. Like that's really hard. The operational tempo was tough. Like these enlisted soldiers were deployed a lot. And it was really, really hard on a lot of families. And there's not a lot you could do. It's, as an officer, you can offer, support and advice and try to talk to them. But, you're talking to, a 32-year-old guy that's married with 3 kids. I'm 23. Like, what am I going to tell him? It's like, I could try to help, but I think the humanization of deployment and what you sort of learn about how to deal with people in times of stress is probably the biggest thing that I learned. I mean, there's no non-stressful days. Every day is stressful. And you add a layer of like you're missing your wife and your kids, and maybe you have, maybe in another platoon you have bad leadership, or maybe the company commander is a terrible leader and puts you in bad situations. Like, how do you manage that? So it's, it taught me a lot about sort of self-worth and how to take care of other people when you can tell they're struggling, and when to lean in and when to lean out. And it's a relationship business even still, right? The military. You have to figure out a way to take people from all sorts of walks of life from 18 to 35 and somehow create a cohesive team. And the common bond that we had, when the night we deployed, I had wives coming to me being like, please bring him home. I'm like, he's 33. I'll try, do my best. There was a lot of weight, on my shoulders to make sure that we were ready and prepared. And, we got very lucky. I brought all 30 guys home. There were other platoons that weren't so lucky. We had a lot of close calls. They weren't great at being bad guys yet because we were there pretty early. So like the roadside bomb situation, they hadn't dialed that in. Like the folks that replaced us, they got smoked. Like those guys had a really, really tough deployment. We had, plenty of like encounters, but they hadn't really figured out how to fight us yet. The group after us, they figured it out. And it was tough. It was tough to watch it once we got back stateside. Just seeing the casualty count was significantly higher than our year.
How did you get to be an officer at so young of an age? Is that because of the college?
That's the ROTC program.
ROTC program.
So when you graduate after the ROTC program, you get commissioned as an officer, just like as if you went to West Point.
Second lieutenant, correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Wow, that is incredible. So, I mean, you come home and now you're watching this happen and unfold on the news, because the war went on for, I mean,
they just left Iraq like 5-6 years ago.
Yes, I mean, a long time. But you made the decision that it's time. You didn't want to go back in. You wanted to do something else. So
I did.
So where do you?
I did want to go back in. I was in the process of actually trying to transition from like regular Army to like special operations. And the girl I was dating at the time, who became my wife and the mother of my 4 kids, was like, really? Like, you've been gone 2 of the past 3 years. Like, you just nothing else that you could do, like, in the world other than this?
Well, he never once said these are the 2 best years of my life.
Which ones?
Hey, Brent, a fast question. At what point in the beginning of that military career did you realize, man, this ain't like the movies?
Oh, yeah.
Probably not until I got to my first unit. So you graduate, you get commissioned, you go to what they call like the officer basic course, where you learn whatever your specialty is. So technically I was an armor officer, which is tanks. So you go to Fort Knox and learn about tanks. You're there for 6 months learning how to do that stuff. And then when I graduated from that, I found out they changed my orders to go, instead of Colorado, they're like, you're going to Korea instead. And I was like, all right, whatever. But I had like a window of time. So I ended up going to the scout leader course, which is like, it's like a specialty reconnaissance school at Fort Knox, which was amazing. It was incredibly hard, but it taught me a ton. Like
but it's still kind of romanticized at this point. Like we grew up in these glorious war movies.
It was still like cool. It was still cool, right? Like
I got you.
Everything was, you're just playing, right? You're like playing Army. It's even though you're in it, it's there wasn't a realization of sort of the heaviness or the.
Well, you're in it, but you haven't stepped into it yet.
Exactly, and so then I finished scout leader course. I fly to Korea, and my unit was actually out in the field. They were doing gunnery, which is when like the tanks go and shoot stuff. And I show up and I'm just watching this operation. And I'm like, okay, this is real. Like, this is no joke. And there wasn't even bad guys, right? It was just, you're shooting targets from a tank. But that was the first time when I got to
It's real. Sure.
That you actually have soldiers that are going to be reporting to you that have been doing this a long time. And so I had a lot of great advice from, ROTC instructors and my brothers that were both just like, you don't know anything. Those guys have been doing it for a long time. Like when you show up, your job is to help them do their job. Like
Sure.
you're technically in charge and they will call you sir, but you don't know shit. So when you get there, you lean on your non-commissioned officers, learn from them, make their job easy. So I had really good advice. So that's what I did. And I got to hear, I mean, I had two sergeants in my platoon that were in the first Gulf War. So I learned.
What were your brothers in the first Gulf War? Because 89 and 92 would have been before.
Yeah. So my oldest brother was stationed out in California. He just got out of Ranger School, and they were on like alert to go, but that war was so short. He didn't actually have to go, but he almost went, but he didn't. And then the middle brother he served only during peacetime.
Okay, got it.
He never had to deploy during conflict. So I think, for me, to answer your question, Stan, it was showing up and actually seeing the soldiers that I was going to be technically in charge of for the next year. Where
when you're in the armored division, are you as the officer inside one of the tanks also or no?
At the beginning, yeah. So when you're a platoon leader, so each tank company it's 3 platoons of 4 tanks each, and the platoon leader is a tank commander in one of the tanks. So you're the tank commander in one tank. Usually have like the most senior gunner, the most senior driver. Like they try to set you up for success. And then so a tank company, let's see, so 16 tanks are in a
How many guys
company.
inside each one?
4. You got a driver, a gunner, a loader. So he's the one that actually puts like the main tank round into the gun tube, and a tank commander. So there's 4.
So it's really kind of the test for claustrophobia.
It's tight. Yeah. You sleep in there,
and you have to like each other. So yeah, you've got to like each other and trust each other.
You don't gotta like each other, but you got to trust each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, it's
crazy.
There's an understanding that even like this is what sometimes frustrates me about the corporate world is like you don't have to like who you work with, but you do have to respect them and make sure you're doing their job to make their job easier. The military does a really good job of that. Yeah. Really good job. Because you don't have to like the guy next to you, but you have to work together to make sure you accomplish whatever you're trying to accomplish. And I think military really does that well. One of my commanders had a great line. Someone was complaining about something. And he goes, look, gentlemen, we are here to defend democracy, not practice it. Go do it. And I thought that was such a great line. I was like, man, that is an awesome line. It stuck with me.
That was just said in the recent campaign, wasn't it?
No.
Probably. But
well, yeah, I mean, like, do you watch any of the the movies that are sort of like revolve around military? Do you watch those?
Not anymore.
For example, like some doctors can't watch doctor shows because like it's so fake, it's bullshit. I can't watch it.
Well, that's the problem is no one will watch them with me because I'm like, that's ridiculous. I'm like, that would never happen in a million years. Like, so I've learned to kind of shut up when they're on. They're fine. I mean, most of them don't portray it particularly well. Yeah. Some are better than others, but it's the movies, I mean, they're entertaining, but generally not that close to reality. Yeah.
So you come back, you wanted to be in special forces. The girlfriend at the time, who you said eventually became your wife, was like, no, absolutely not. So what do you do? So what was your,
it wasn't absolutely not. It was, I'm probably not going to be here if you do that. Like, it was that.
Ultimatum time.
So it wasn't an ultimatum, but she was like, seriously? And
she was a good communicator.
She said what was on her mind, which is exactly what I wanted her to do. So I knew I didn't want to stay in regular Army. I knew that for sure. So I did a lot of missions when I was over there with some special operator type folks, not SF, but sort of the other guys. That in those units are very selective in a way that you don't really try out. You kind of get picked. And the biggest thing for them is the psyche valve. It's not the other stuff. Mm-hmm. They're looking for a very specific type of person. Like they don't want someone that doesn't have anything to live for. Like they don't want someone who's over aggressive. They want someone that's calm under pressure. They want someone that has each other's back. And there's a skill set involved with those sorts of units That's one, it's hard to find, and two, it's very hard to get into.
Mm.
So you don't really get to try out. They just kind of ask you,
They
and
find
once
you.
and when they ask you, then then the tryout starts. So it does. It's not like they ask you and you're in. It's they ask you and then you try out. So I was asked. I did a bunch of missions with those
You
guys.
passed the psych evaluation? You were a
No,
hothead back in the day.
I did not. No, yeah, no kidding. No, I never got that far because the I did enough missions with those guys that they knew me pretty well, and the unit's very small. It's smaller, like it's a much smaller unit than like the SEAL group. There's like 100 dudes that do it. As far as the operational side, you have intel guys and support guys that are all also only asked. You can't try out for that stuff either. Okay. So it's a very small community, and so I did enough missions with them where they were like, "Come to Fort Bragg and check it out," and I was like, "Okay." And Katie was like, "Nope." I was like,
wow. See, you made the cut, then you had to back off.
Well, it was a tough decision because it was
sure.
That decision's a lifelong decision. Like it's you do that, you're in for a long time. And there's no turning back once you sort of go that way. So it was do I want to be a civilian or do I want to do this? And I don't regret getting out because it led to my four kids. But there's times where I'm like, I probably should have done that.
You came to a big fork in the road, no question.
Really big, and it was a really hard decision. I don't regret the decision. I think either path would have been good. I think I would have been happy either way, but I don't think I would have the four kids that I have if I
just a commentary. I've always told my kids there are very few times in life when you see the real essence of a person. One time is when they're buying a home. There's no facade. I mean, if they're crazy, okay, that's one time. I did a lot of. I was a surgical tech after college. When you're in a surgery room with just the doctor and the surgeon there, they are who they are. They're good, they're bad, or indifferent. Being in combat's the same thing. When you go on patrol with these guys, there's no masks on. You're seeing exactly who you're dealing with. It's a unique time of human nature.
What's really interesting about that too, Stan, to your point, is who you think folks are going to be through training are not the same when the first bullet flies, right? So folks that you thought would be like marginal turn out to be complete badasses. And then, guys that you thought would maybe be leading the charge are, terrified, right?
It's a revelation. It's crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's terrified. No one's like, if you're not terrified, I don't want you anywhere near me during something like that because that means you're bananas, right? So it's, courage was described to me by one of my commanders as you better be afraid. It's being afraid and then having the strength to do it anyway is courage, right? It's not being afraid. I think you want people to be nervous and you want people to, be afraid. It's a scary environment, right? If you're like, don't care, like that's weird. Like
what's so tough is there's even as much as you train and much as there's really no way to train bravery under fire or fortitude or standing up. It's I
can't even imagine. I literally cannot even imagine being in that situation.
Well, I mean, the other thing too, there's a famous quote from Mike Tyson that's kind of similar to being in combat is everyone has a plan until you get punched in the face, right? Like that is, you spend hours sort of wargaming your mission and then you get on site and one thing happens, the whole plan has to change and it has to change right then. And you have
to survive those kind of encounters, you have to be able to reverse that process going back into society, which another impossible task.
Very, very hard. I think it's one of them. They do a much better job of it now than they did when we came home.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that we talk a lot about things are different now, but how did you do that? How did you get assimilated back into regular life?
I just shoved it all in a box and
you compartmentalize. You have no choice.
Yeah, and
ever pop out?
That's terrible. Of course it did. Yeah. In all sorts of different ways, right? I mean, I had a lot of struggle. Almost everyone I knew had a lot of struggles. It was a hard time, right? I mean, even if you went over there and you were a mechanic and you didn't get shot at it, it's still a year in a terrible place.
It's in the air.
Oh, yeah, I mean, away from your friends and family, regardless of what your job function was over there, like you come home different. Um,
Well,
and
fast
it's
forward 22 years. It's been about 22 years since you were there. Probably feels
brief.
like yesterday. How do you navigate that over the next 22? Like, like,
I have two therapists still
okay.
talk about stuff.
Yeah.
Um, no, and it took me a long time to be able to talk about it in a way that was helpful. I think one thing so the VA, they offer the resources, but they're apologists. I have not found one sort of VA sort of asset that was helpful in that regard, right? They all just say it's okay, you did what you had to do. Like they're just going to be on your side about everything, right? And I didn't find that particularly helpful because there was stuff I need to own, not just from the deployment stuff, but just like in my personal life that I needed to kind of unleash that was sort of just stashed away. And it took, 6 or 7 therapists to finally find someone that would like call me out of my shit. That I felt comfortable enough to like really let the walls down and be like, here's the deal. And that's when it starts to feel a little bit better, is when you can not just talk about it, but have some techniques in terms of what do I do now? Like, what do I do? How do I improve myself? How do I, take that part of my brain that's compartmentalized, like Stan said, and like open it back up, but in a way that's
and
healthy,
deal with it.
right?
Mhm.
You can't forget traumatic events, but you can talk about them in a way and have sort of a plan to deal with them that lets you cope in a healthy way, as opposed to what most military folks do, which is coping in a very unhealthy way. A lot of self-medicating, a lot of anger issues. I mean, I can't tell you how many of, not just folks in my platoon, but like officer friends of mine that are, divorced not once, but twice. Like it makes you a very hard person to love if you don't manage it correctly. It's very hard to assimilate. It is. It's tough. Little things just annoy the crap out of you, which you think when you get back, you're like, all I want to do is get back. I'm not going to sweat any small stuff. I just can't wait to get home. Right. People are like, what'd you miss the most? I'm like, ice. I just want some ice. Like just little things. Right. But then you get back, it doesn't take long, and you see some donkey doing something, and you're like, what an asshole. And it just triggers you. Like, that guy has no idea what I just went through, and he's just being a total asshole to some person. Like, and it's hard to turn that part of your brain off. And you don't need to turn it off. It's a way to cope with it. It took me a long time to sort of unpackage it. And I needed the right professional. I needed the right person, and I found her. She's awesome.
Should we transition to better stuff today in the present?
Sure.
Okay. You go first, Jay.
Yeah. So after the Army, moved to New England, got a job at Lehman Brothers, moved to New York City, traded bonds there for a few years.
You were in New York City?
Yeah, I was in the city for a couple of years. Yeah.
I have no idea. This is so crazy. I don't know any of this. All right. This is all pre-Facebook.
Oh, yeah. It was pre-smartphone. I remember when I was at Lehman, I remember buying the Razor. The Razor phone.
Gosh. I
Like
cannot see
$1,000.
you living in New York
Lehman
City.
Brothers, big deal for Lehman Brothers.
I left before they went poof. So I think I was the canary in the coal mine on that. But I didn't love, unlike my job, I didn't love the city. Like I knew I didn't want to raise my kids there, my family there. Like I was married at that point, but no kids. And so for me, I was looking around, and at the time, it was probably a little idealistic because it was kind of my first job post-Army, and it was like every man for himself sort of thing. It was very cutthroat, which is fine. But like no one had each other's back, and I don't know. It didn't feel good. I didn't like it. I was just like, I don't like this. So I did it for like 2 years, and then I just bailed. I had a couple other offers up in Boston, and I called those folks back, and I was like, hey, what do you got? So there was an opening at Fidelity. I went, interviewed for that, moved up to New Hampshire, and started working there in 2006 or 7, and resigned last week.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, 18 plus years. Yeah.
Was this resignation planned or was spontaneous?
Little of both.
Okay.
Little of both.
A lot of management changes over those 16, 17 years.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it came down to the quality of life is pretty good in terms of like work-life balance stuff. But I'd always had fairly decent managers. And then a couple years ago, 2 years ago, I had a manager that just very tough to deal with. And it got to the point where for me, I couldn't do my job correctly. Um, so I tried
Out
to,
of curiosity, was
yeah,
he a guy that came up through the ranks in Fidelity, or was he an
it
outside
was a
hire?
she, it's a she. And
Oh, look at
no,
the assumption, Dad. Look at
she
that.
was
What?
she was an outside hire.
Okay, I get it. I get it. I lived through too many public companies myself.
Yeah, so she was an outside hire. I won't get into the details, but she's
But sounds like she was a qualified mangler as opposed to manager.
never managed anything.
No,
And
mangler. Yeah.
yeah, I gave her, I gave her lots of chances. And eventually, it for me, I was like, I can't work for this person. So
Toxic masculinity. I've
That's
seen it all the
unfortunate
time.
because, like, look at that. Like, someone who'd been in a company for 18 years, 18 and a half
yeah,
years, and it takes like one leader to be like, that's it, I'm done, I'm out of here.
I mean, I tried. I went to HR like in a nice way to be
Yeah.
like,
There is no nice
training
way.
on how to deal with this stuff. And so eventually I had to like bring HR and employee relations like into my reviews so that they could like coach her on how to like give them properly.
Hmm.
It was like, I got thick skin, right? I was in the army. You get some pretty tough reviews when you're in the army. Like, I'm fine. You want to give me some constructive criticism? Let's go. Right. What do you want me to work on? But it was just nonsensical and ridiculous. And I got to the point where I never hated going to work. I hated going to work. Yeah, I hated going to work. And so I let it go. I was like, I'm going to muscle through. It's going to be okay. And then finally, I'm like, I can't do it.
How
So
was
I,
your exit interview?
Courage. That's courage right there, being like, peace out.
Was
it
there
was
any
a really hard
concern?
decision.
Was there
Really hard.
concern during the exit interview?
I haven't had that yet. I just,
Oh,
yeah, I haven't
Super
had that
fresh.
yet.
So what's
Uh,
next for you then?
So they actually did give me severance because I wasn't going to a competitor. So I've got 6 months to kind of figure it out. I got a bunch of stuff in mind. Some's in sort of my current business, which so I trade investment grade corporate bonds. That's what I do for like mutual funds. Um, but there's also lots of ideas I have about pivoting to something else. A little bit more client focused. Stick me in front of people, let me talk about markets. And I think the perfect role for me would be finding like a investment advisor with a couple $1 billion and send me in there and let me talk to rich people and I'll get their money. That's
There you
kind of
go. Hey, so rich people, if you're listening, give Brent
rich
your
people. If
money.
you're listening, you can call me. I'll talk about markets with you. No charge. But so I don't know. I mean, I think for me the biggest thing for the next step. I mean, honestly, like if I won I call it a lottery job. If I could win the lottery, my lottery job would be a high school basketball coach. That's would be lights out, no question.
But yeah, but isn't that something easy to do?
I mean, I coach all my kids' stuff, right? I've been coaching hoops for a really long time, and soccer and lacrosse and baseball and yada yada. And no, I mean it would no, you'd have to like start at the bottom, right? You just like volunteer to like help out the current coach and work your way up, right? Lots of folks have done that. Unfortunately for me, I don't really have that option. I got to support 4 kids, so I can't work for free for for a long time. But that's what I would love to do because some of the most influential people in my life, aside from my brothers, have been youth coaches. All the way through high school, I've learned leadership lessons from youth coaches that I apply today, think about all the time, and just making a difference in where the kids live. The town's called Nashua in New Hampshire, and it's pretty eclectic. It's like the only city in New Hampshire that's eclectic. But there's regions of the city that are like pretty tough, and so going through like the youth programs, like you get all walks of life, right? Going through that stuff, and you see an opportunity to sort of lean in and help these kids. And even if it's just giving them a safe place to play around for 2 hours and making them feel good about their day. But for me, so many youth coaches were influential in just supporting me and my youth that I try to give that back. There's a what's it called? Charity's not the right word. It's kind of like the Boys and Girls Club, but it's called the Police Athletic League.
Oh
Hmm.
yeah, pal. Yeah.
You guys have a PAL down there?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got a PAL here. And my son plays for the PAL football team. And so I met a bunch of, the local cops that are involved and the folks that are in the leadership positions at PAL. And it really resonated with me because you're not just helping kids, you're helping local kids, right? You're helping kids that are in
In
your
your
community.
town, sure.
Yeah, like in your community, um, you know, give them even just a little, right? And so I spend, a few hours a week over at the PAL Center, just helping kids with whatever, whether it's homework or just hanging out, shoot the breeze or whatever. But it's just one more influence that they could talk to or whatever. And my son actually won the PAL Football Player of the Year this year.
Wow.
And it was really, really cool. And so I was like, when can he start volunteering? And so
Yeah.
he's got to be 14. And when he turns 14, which is in December 30th, like he'll start coming with me and start working with, these second, third, and fourth grade kids that are sort of at risk, from really tough backgrounds that, just need some friends, need some advocates. And I want him to he's gotten so much out of that program. I want him to, understand where it comes from and get back and start working with the younger kids. So that's going to be he doesn't have a choice on this one. He's going to get involved. So I like to get involved heavily with the community. That's why I coach. It's not just for my kids, it's for all the other kids too.
I love
That's
that.
great.
So, when your children are old enough, are you gonna not allow's not the right word, but if they say they want to go the ROTC route, are you gonna push them and say like, yeah, let's go for it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have, I mean, I don't think there's a, I'm
Can
not
I
sure the
ask
right,
of knowing like the impact
yeah,
that
like the feeling you have serving your country
yeah.
is something that's very hard to duplicate, right? Like when the national anthem comes on at like sporting events or whatever, like you should see
Hmm.
my kids. Like they are locked up, like hand on their heart, like staring at the flag, right? And
Mm.
it's it's a feeling when you actually are representing that flag to protect the freedoms that we want all of us to have always, right? It's a very special feeling. And as an officer to be sort of leading America's sons and daughters like into a situation to protect freedom is a responsibility that I can't explain. Um, so if they are drawn that direction, I would 100% support them.
Encourage you.
I
Yeah.
wonder like if there you might not even know this number. I don't even know why I'm thinking about it, but like the number of veterans that we have in this country, like what do you have an idea of like what number that is?
Yeah, it's just under 1.5 million, I think, right now.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I don't do math in public, so what percent of the population
I
would
mean, what do
that
we?
be?
What's the population? What are we at? Like
300 million, 315, that range.
315. So do that, man. Not very many. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a small universe. Even though you think that the military is so huge,
Yeah.
that's one thing with an all volunteer military, right? It's we don't have a draft. There's you don't have to serve.
Yeah.
There's no mandatory service, so it's a collection of folks that actually want to do it.
Well, and I'm not like well versed in the numbers today, but Dad, maybe you know better. But do you think that the numbers are higher, lower than when you enlisted? Do you think
Well,
that
it changes a lot depending on the presidency, to be honest with you. So like um certain administrations want to build it up and certain administrations want to trim it down. So like when Bill Clinton got elected, he cut the military by like 20%. So he gave early outs to folks that were in that would want to get out, they could get out. And then under George W. Bush, like he built it back up, especially after 9/11. So it I think it fluctuates with the times and the administration and sort of what's going on. The recruiting efforts when you need bodies, like they offer some like pretty enticing things. So if you're a 17 or 18-year-old getting out of high school and you don't know what you want to do, they'll give you like a $20,000 signing bonus or something, and like that's a lot of money for a lot of people. Right? It's a lot of dough. So, but then when they're not in sort of that crunch, like there's no incentive. It's like, yeah, you can come if you want. So it fluctuates depending on sort of the needs of the military, as opposed to sort of what people want to do, I would say.
Well, I had no idea that and obviously the latest news I had no idea about. That's like last week you said, but I had
No,
no
that wasn't planned to be a
idea.
topic of discussion, but yeah.
But what an incredible, I mean, it's so funny because I literally think of you as this kid that, I actually pulled up the picture. I don't even know if you're in this picture because if you are, I don't recognize you. And
Show them the picture.
listener, you can't, if you're listening, you can't see it, but I'm going to put it on here we go. Can you see this picture now? Are you in that
Yeah,
picture?
looking.
I don't think you are.
I see Jamie, of
Yeah.
course.
I'm
So
not in that one now.
that's Chuck right there.
Yeah, I
So
don't
you must
remember
have been
Chuck.
either not there that day or
I
maybe
know
night.
any of those people. Who else is there?
That is Mike
Oh,
Hay.
that's Tanya. Is that Tanya at the top?
Yeah, right there.
I
That's
remember her.
Lindsay. Lindsay. That's
How
Melissa
old were you guys here,
Taylor.
Jamie? What was the age here?
1985. We would have been 8 years old.
Seven,
No,
six,
seven,
seven. Yeah.
7 years old. Yeah, 7 years
Wow.
old. So you might,
I don't know.
this is Donald Barugi, if you remember him.
Nope.
Um, Jason Hart up here.
Nope.
Renat over here.
Yes. Obviously, yes.
Yeah, I don't, yeah. I mean, you might have been the year after. That's Brian
Yeah, I
Grossbach
think. Yeah, I
there.
don't know a ton of those. A ton of those.
Funny. So you might have been like the year after. That's the one that I don't have anything after that. I've got
Oh
ones
man.
of us when we were older somewhere in my parents' house that I'll have to look up and of you, me, and Joey. We were like for a while, we were like the Three Musketeers, the three of us hanging out, even.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm
I
just
talk to Joey all the time.
I love
Still.
that. I
Yeah.
took a picture of the screen. I'm gonna text it to him and be like, "You're next, buddy."
I have thought he was gonna be like a guest, like you were gonna like pop him in like during this
I
thing.
should have.
I would have
Oh,
been like, oh my
I
God. Yeah.
totally- This is your life, Brent. This is your life.
Yeah. I'd be like,
I'll
oh,
take off
Joey.
my mask. It's Joey. Ah!
That would have been
I
awesome.
love it. But I think
He's doing great. He's doing
yeah,
great.
it's amazing. I think like I hate Facebook, but I also love Facebook because I get to see what people are doing without, you don't always have the time. Like life is, and I hate that. Like life is busy. We don't always have the time to pick up the phone and call somebody and do those things. And I try as best as I can, but it is nice to be able to know where people are. And I think it's just so great that, like we said, we met when we were like 7, 8 years old.
Crazy.
And I think that obviously I don't think any 7 or 8 year olds are listening to this right now. And if they are, we gotta it's
I should
explicit.
have cleaned up my language. I gotta put some beeps in.
Yeah, exactly. Beep, beep, beep. But the message is that like, listen, friendships can last forever. And I think that even as parents or as family members, when you have young ones that are creating these, like there's just something to be said about those friendships that are just incredible. And I love that.
And it's easier now than ever. Like you it's one of the things I talked about at the very beginning. I think I spent most of my life, I think it's about relationships, no matter what you're doing. Good times, bad times. Like, everyone's got a list, right? The who's going to get me out of jail list and who's going to help me bury a body list. Like those, like you've got 4 or 5 that no matter what you need, even if they're not close, they're on a plane, they're on the way, right? And cultivating those relationships, I think at every stop, through your life, even if it's one person, I think is just how you learn and grow and just be be in people's lives in a way that's meaningful, right? And so I tried to do a good job of reaching out to folks. I do a poor job of it for the most part. But it does remind you that, the folks that are on those lists for you, right? Those I need help lists or whatever, like check in on them, see how they're doing, right? Cultivate it, keep that relationship strong. Even though they're going to be there, like give them a call, see how they're doing. That's kind of.
I don't even know. I'm gonna check real fast. I don't even do I have a phone number for you on my phone? Don't give it on this line over here, but I don't think that I even have. Let's see.
I don't think so.
I don't think I do. We're gonna have to change that. Ooh, I don't know. Let's
Is it
see.
a 719 number?
Yes, let's see if this
That's
is
me.
your number. Hold on. And now I won't have an excuse to not talk to you after this.
Oh,
Did you get a hi? I just texted you a hi. Did you get it? Okay,
Yeah,
now
I actually have you in my phone as Jamie Brown. So that's
I
that's how long it's been.
I'm forever that name for many people. But
You are for me.
let's not be strangers moving forward.
Absolutely.
If you're down here visiting your family, please.
I think I'm gonna come down soon. I think.
Oh, cool. So
Yeah,
don't
'cause
mention
my
those
brother's
dates
down
on
there, and
here.
obviously I have some free time now. So I think I'm gonna come down, visit my brother, and play some golf. So I'll give you a buzz when I'm down there.
Please do. That would be amazing. I would love to see you in person. Thank you for taking time out of your, well, now you're kind of like almost
I got
semi-retired.
all the time in the world. Yeah.
You'll be busy soon. You'll be back.
I
Yeah.
know. I know. No, I'm not worried about the next step. I'm gonna take some time and chill and get to a lot of basketball games that start at 3 o'clock that I normally have to miss. So
Love
I'm
that.
excited for it. Mr. Brown, it's really good to see you.
And Brent, really sincerely thank you for your service. It
Yeah.
was
No,
intense.
it was a long time ago, but you are more than welcome. It was my pleasure. It
Yes.
was
Well,
my pleasure.
next time I say the national anthem, you will be one of the people that I think about as well too, because I love that there's that. I mean, obviously it's important anyway. I have a lot of friends who have served, but I love just hearing your story and what you've done with your life. And I think it will really resonate with a lot of people who, maybe have been through the same situation. So thank you.
I'll leave you with two things. One, something I always told my guys when things were really crappy, it can always be worse.
Mm.
There's no bottom, right? So if you're having just the worst, right? I remember I watched your podcast with Jeremy Holiday.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was awesome, right? And you talked about being a four and like having those days where you're just like, ugh, right? That four could be a zero or a -5, right? And I would tell like it would be miserable over there. And they're like, how could it possibly be worse? I'm like, you're alive, aren't you?
Mm.
Right? It can always be worse, right? That's one thing. And then there's three rules that I live by too. One, if someone asks you to do something, do it. Like unless there's some reason that you can't do it, like someone is willing to give their time to hang out with you, you should do it. Two, if someone asks you for coffee, go get coffee. And three, don't ever pass up a bathroom because you never know the last time you're going to get one.
These sound like Jack Reacher rules.
I like Reacher. I like Reacher.
Oh man, I love it. Thank you so much, Brent. I
Great to see you
appreciate you
guys.
so much. I cannot wait to see you in person.
I will let you know when I'm coming.
Please do.
Lieutenant
I
Dan,
appreciate you.
signing off. Lieutenant Brent.
Love it.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
buddy.
Bye,
Thank
guys.
you. Bye. Oh my goodness. Let's see where we go here. Wow.
Got more than you bargained for, huh?
It's so funny. Like I literally used to like punk around with him. Like we were like punk kids. And you might not remember because you don't remember anyone, but like me, him, and Joey, and like we were, and like it just, I hate and love at the same time. I hate that I don't know what some people have done over the last
Yeah,
25
you can't,
years.
listen, you're on your own journey. You can't keep up with all the kind of stuff. Your life has accelerated, and you can't keep up with that stuff.
Oh my gosh. But like what a cool, just it's just incredible. And I remember I was doing some work in Fayetteville, North Carolina one time. I don't remember who the client was. I was there. This is years ago. And I was flying there. I think I flew from Chicago. Yeah, it's a big base. And there's a bunch of kids on my plane. And I say kids because they were like 18 years old and they were getting ready to serve for the first time. They're going off there. And just hearing their conversations, like when you talk to him about like when did he first realize that it wasn't, like the video games or the movie,
Sure.
TV. And here they were so, and I was young at the time. I think this is like, I must have been in my 20s when this happened. But I'm hearing them talk to each other. And I was like, gosh, they have no idea what they're getting themselves into. It's so incredible to me that 18-year-olds, we have a nephew that's almost 18, or I have a nephew and you have a
Sure.
grandson are going off and protecting our country. It's still never, it blows my mind that that is the case, that that's how old they are and going to deal with really adult themed things, I just,
Well, in my era of Vietnam, the numbers, it was mandatory to go. There was a draft. And the number, I mean, I went in for an examination after college, I got a low number in the lottery. And I was on a bus with a bunch of other guys. Unfortunately, I was 4F because of my high blood pressure, couldn't go. But it was rough and wild. Kids all over going in for exams, getting transferred over, sent overseas. That's what the Army was. It was all 18-year-old kids.
unbelievable. And then, like he talked about, when you come back, that he still struggles with that. And it's still, I mean, what he must have seen and done and experienced, and I have friends that are in all the different branches. And we had this, it's funny, at the end, you said, thank you for your service. And I had this, I think maybe you and I may have talked about it before. And if you have served, I'd love to hear your answer. But I always see someone in military or I find out and I always say thank you. I say thank you for your service. And we were at the airport not too long ago and there was a gentleman dressed in his fatigues and I don't remember what branch it was, but I went and said that. And my husband was like, they don't always appreciate you saying that. I'm like, what are you talking about? Why would they not appreciate that? And I said, excuse me, sir. Like, my husband just said
Oh,
that
you didn't.
I did. I said that you don't always appreciate hearing that. And he's like, well, it's kind of true. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, we hear it a lot. He's like, and it's just, I feel like it was my duty. Like it was an interesting perspective of that. But I am so grateful because we don't realize, I mean, I think we forget how lucky we are to have the freedoms that we have living in this country.
Well,
Wasn't
I think we're hopefully, I think we're going in for resurgence of maybe patriotism again, which is a wonderful thing. Uh, it's again, it comes down to management, comes down to leadership. If things don't change, it's crazy time.
But it's amazing, just like the little things that we don't realize that we have and the things that we can do. And I'm just grateful for anyone that's listening, for everyone who's ever served in any country, really. Like if you take that choice and you say, you want to be a patriot and you want to serve your country and defend your country and whatever that looks like, unless you're actually fighting for hate, I don't appreciate that. But the ones that are doing it for the right reasons, I think that is like just incredible. So what a cool way to, end our day.
Now he's been fighting a corporate battle. I've been in that corporate battle myself with the managers that just kind of don't see things the same, and that's why I knew it was probably an outside hire they brought in that was
Yeah.
not familiar with the Fidelity culture or whatever. But and they give that person the power, and they lose some very good people, longstanding people that have been experienced. It's a clash of personalities, a whole bunch of dynamics going on.
Well, you know what they say, when one door closes, a window opens.
Yeah, sometimes the window just smashes and deteriorates. Anyway, another great session that you're
Oh, what an
unprepared for.
uplifting comment.
Another session you learned some things you weren't prepared for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, all right, Dad. I love you. Thank you for being part of the
Love you,
journey with
baby.
me. Until
I'm not
next
going
time.
back on the bike. I'm finished. Yep. Thank you for your service.
Yes, as well.
Thank everybody. Think.
Yes, thank. Love you, Dad.
Love you too. Bye bye.
Hey, thank you for tuning into today's What's Your Story podcast.
To learn more or share your story, go to jamiemarco.com. That's www.jamiemarco.com. And we will see you next time.